Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. The latest from the World Boxing Council's convention.
In Hamburg, Germany.
Mandatory challengers have been determined at the World Boxing Council's convention.
What does this mean?
Skye Nicolson is in advanced talks for a unification homecoming fight in Australia early next year, but otherwise will fight mandatory challenger, the third-ranked Tiaria Brown. Brown's representative for OTX said Brown has already stepped aside once and that she wants the fight now. But it was agreed that she would wait to see what can be arranged for Nicolson. The former champion Jelena Marjanovic approached the Diaz and said that she was back and wanted a title fight. Suleiman said the WBC committee would assess her request. I just want to retire with the opportunity to win my belt back before I retire, she said. Suleiman has given Matchroom a month to make arrangements for the Nicolson event in Australia. OTX agreed to that. OTX, who represent Tiaria Brown, on the provision that Brown is next. And so it's as I suspected. For Skye Nicholson's big homecoming fight in Australia on the undercard of George Cambodia's Matchroom debut, she will be unifying titles, and the only champion available, the only one that's around for her to fight, is Nina Meinke! Because it sure as hell ain't Amanda Serrano. Do you think Amanda Serrano would be fighting Skye in Skye's neck of the woods when Amanda's lineal, Amanda's unified, and she's the money? She's the A-side fighter. No. If Skye's gonna have a unification match in Australia, it's gonna be with Nina Meinke! Nina Meinke, who sports professional record of 19 wins with 3 losses, no draws, 4 knockouts, having been knocked out once, many years ago by Katie Taylor, in 22 professional bouts, just once. It stands to reason that for Skye's big homecoming fight, they didn't want to just schedule a mandatory, a run-of-the-mill mandatory. They wanted it to be a significant fight, a meaningful fight, and to mark the occasion, it's gonna be a unification match! Though where does that leave Tiaria Brown? She is the mandatory challenger, and what's revealing is that she said she already stepped aside once. I wasn't aware of any step-aside deals being reached. When would Tiaria Brown have stepped aside to allow Skye to fight somebody else? Could have been for Skye Nicholson's last fight, the Raven Chapman fight. And now what they want Tiaria to do is step aside again, and the OTX people are on board. They said they're willing. That's Tiara's promoter. They've got a deal with DAZN. If Skye makes that fight with Nina, and they fight in the first quarter of next year, Tiaria won't be left in limbo. She won't be left without a dance partner. She's already en route to a January fight for what is a Philly show promoted by Kaylee Reese and Brian Cohen. What else caught my attention is that Canada's own former unified champion, Jelena Marjanovic, says that she's back and she wants a world title opportunity, though obviously she shouldn't be allowed to skip ahead of Tiaria Brown in the queue. So I think what would be ideal is if Tiara fights her in January. I don't know that that's the situation, but at the same time, Tiara's opponent hasn't been announced yet. You're saying you want a title shot, she's got one. So go in there and win it from her. The issue is, if Jelena Marjanovic ends up fighting Tiara Brown, she don't make it to a title. She don't make it to a Skye Nicholson fight. Tiara beats her. Now thinking about it, I do view Tiaria Brown as a more risky opponent for Skye than Nina. Bear in mind, I think that Skye beats them both, but I think that Tiaria is more capable of pushing Skye than Nina. Nina Meinke, otherwise known as Nina the Brave, and that's what she is, because she signed up to fight Amanda Serrano in Puerto Rico, in Amanda's neck of the woods. But Amanda got injured. Now, she's signed up to unify titles with Skye in Skye's neck of the woods. She is brave, but she ain't staying champion. She ain't winning that Skye Nicholson fight. If they make it, Skye beats her and becomes unified champion at this weight. Is this a duck? Asking Tiaria Brown to step aside so that she can unify titles with Nina? That's one way to look at it. If you feel that Tiara is a credible threat to Skye, if you feel like Tiara would beat her, then maybe you look at it through that lens. But the lens I look at it through, Skye beats them both. Skye's been beating the drum of becoming this division's undisputed champion for as long as I can remember, so she's just following through with that. If you want to lambast her for it, that would hardly seem reasonable to me. It stands to reason that if you can have a unification match, Go ahead. It's what you wanted. And Tiaria's not going anywhere. You will still have her to answer to afterwards. She can take care of Nina in the first quarter and fight Tiaria in the third or fourth quarter. There's plenty of time. That's the latest from the World Boxing Council's convention. Men's junior middleweight news, unified champion Sebastian Fundora has no intention of looking beyond Errol Spence Jr. It would seem that at the annual convention, he's not under any pressure or any orders that satisfy either of his mandatory challengers in Terence Crawford or Virgil Ortiz.
Hamburg, Germany.
WBC and WBO junior middleweight champion Sebastian Fundora has said his next fight will be the expected bout against Errol Spence. Spence last fought in July of last year.
It's over a year ago.
But is likely to get a straight shot at Fundora in early 2025. Asked whether Spence, 28-1 with 22 KOs, was next, Fundora said he should be. That fight's next for us, but I'm not going to say a date because usually people will put it on social media or anybody that's doing an interview saying I said this, and then they'll call me a liar. So I'm just going to leave that to the promoter. But he should be next.
No, he shouldn't.
We don't even know who's supposed to be training Errol Spence Jr. moving forward. It's reported that his issues with Derek James started immediately after the Terence Crawford fight well over a year ago. And since then, the two have parted ways, and they have some legal matters between each other to tend to. But who's supposed to be preparing Errol for this fight?
He should have had a tune-up this year.
Well, he doesn't believe in tune-up fights, remember? Fundora has been training since April, having defeated Tim Kazoo in March in one of the fights of the year. The Spence fight could happen in Texas, though Fundora is not ruling out Las Vegas. The Crawford loss, a 9th-round stoppage for the undisputed title at 147, was brutal for Spence, who was dissected by the brilliant Nebraskian. There are plenty who felt Spence might not be the same since, and others who don't think he's been the same since he survived a high-speed car crash back in 2019, over 5 years ago. Fundora has nothing but respect for Spence, and will be training for the Spence who cut a swath through the welterweights before he ran into Crawford. Absolutely. He only has just one loss, said Fundora. The 6'5", 26-year-old who is 21-1 with 13 KOs, there's no reason for anybody to be doubting him. He was a champion for a long time.
And he's been out a long time, Sebastian.
Now you're just insulting people's intelligence. There's no reason to be doubting him. We saw what happened in his last fight, and we know how long he's been out.
Come on.
But he said there's no reason to be doubting him. He was a champion for a long time. He defended the IBF title a couple of times. He unified with Sean Porter. He unified with Lugas. I don't know why people are overlooking him. We're definitely not doing that. We see the same Spence as always, and I think everybody should expect a good fight from him.
You're just talking him up now, so that if after you beat him, you can get the same or more credit that Terence Crawford got. And bear in mind that there are some people out there who don't even want to give Terence credit for that fight. So why would they give it to you?
They came up with all kinds of excuses afterwards. That Errol was weight drained, or that Errol was never the same after the car accident. Some of these people actually picked him to win the fight beforehand, so that afterwards they could start up with all that stuff.
That shit.
And now you're facing an older, less active version of that fighter, and you're telling us you don't know why people are overlooking him?
You're just insulting our intelligence. And so is the World Boxing Council, who now ranks Errol Spence Jr. at number 1 in their updated rank standings. You tell me, from the time that Terence Crawford kicked his ass up and down that ring till now, what the hell has he done to be ranked at number 1 at a weight he hasn't fought?
It's ridiculous. You're just insulting our intelligence. The function of rank standings, is to give a division a hierarchy, a pecking order. But what message does it send when you rank Errol at number 1 ahead of so many fighters that have been fighting?
Well, he's been on holiday for a year.
Veteran content creator and analyst Ade Oladipo reacted by saying, rankings are laughable. I'm a big fan of Errol, but come on. So Spence, who has never fought at 154, hasn't fought since July of last year, hasn't won a fight since April of 2022, over a year ago, too.
That is literally over 2 years ago.
Is ranked number 1 by the World Boxing Council at 154?
Well, that's the PBC way. You lose a fight, you get an immediate title shot.
What?
You lose a fight, you get an immediate title shot. Don't forget that when Sebastian Fundora got the shot at Tim Kazu's belts, he was coming off a loss. Now he's facing a fighter that is also coming off a loss. It's the PBC way.
If you lose your last fight, you get an immediate title shot. They may as well be rewarding you for losing in the World Boxing Council. They're letting them.
But not the World Boxing Organization, not the WBO. They told Sebastian weeks ago that they would allow him a voluntary, but it cannot be Errol Spence Jr. It can't be Spence because he's never fought at 154, and
he's not ranked by them, but he is ranked number 1 by way of the WBC, and for having done what? All you're doing is accommodating what the promoters want.
Hard to imagine that this fight ends well for the former unified champion Errol Spence Jr., now campaigning as a junior middle. Under these circumstances, unless this is a scripted matchup,
conventional wisdom would suggest that Errol Spence Jr. is cashing out. When you take on a fight like this with a guy like Sebastian, one of the most awkward fights in the entire junior middleweight division, when you yourself are coming off a loss, you haven't fought in over a year, the night of the fight, it will actually be closer to 2 years of inactivity.
And 3 years since you won a fight.
It's hard to imagine that Errol is doing anything here but cashing out, that he just wants one last payday. But how much does he stand to make from this fight? What does Spence versus Fundora generate on pay-per-view? When he fought Danny Garcia all those years ago, all that did was a little over 200,000 buys. When he fought Lucas, it was the same thing.
Yeah, he did way better numbers with Crawford, though.
Yeah, but Crawford kicked his ass. Crawford beat him up and down that ring and kicked his ass. So you're not going to turn around now, well over a year later, fight Sebastian and do numbers like that.
Maybe he's trying to cash out, but how much cash does he actually stand to make?
This could get ugly. This could be hard to watch for a lot of people, what Errol Spence Jr. may have been reduced to.
Oh yeah, there's some people, they want him to return to his winning ways. They're still holding out hope that the Errol Spence Jr. of old will return at a higher and healthier weight. But I'm not optimistic.
I don't imagine this is going to end well for Errol if it actually happens. In men's super middleweight news, veteran boxing scribe Jake Donovan said, the WBC continued its ongoing tradition of promising David Benavidez that his next fight will be for the championship, confirmed on Wednesday that the winner of his February bout with David Morrell will be both the mandatory challenger via the WBC and the WBA. Both of those secondary titles will be on the line, but we knew that already. What's flying under the radar is what Keith Idek added to the conversation.
What?
What Baldy failed to mention is David Benavidez and David Morrell and everyone else still needs to get in line behind Michael Eiffert, Germany's own Michael Eiffert. What are we just supposed to ignore? That he beat Jean Pascal 7 or 8 years after Jean was a top light heavyweight contender?
He's trying to be sarcastic, but it's still a valid point that Michael Eiffert became the IBF's mandatory challenger to the IBF champion before David Benavidez, before David Morrell.
Before either of those fighters moved up from 168 up to 175, Michael Eiffert beat Jean Pascal in a final eliminator to crown the IBF's mandatory challenger, and that order has not come down. So where, according to the World Boxing Council and according to the World Boxing Association, the winner of Benavidez versus Morrell is supposed to get first dibs,
The IBF might have something to say about that.
that IBF final eliminator between Michael Eiffert and Jean Pascal was way back there in March of last year. Michael has only fought once since then, and we haven't heard much from him or the IBF as it pertains to satisfying that mandatory.
That's just something to consider, given all the movement at 175 pounds, that at any minute, the IBF could decide to order that fight.
I don't believe that David Benavidez wants the winner of Better Beef versus Bivol, and I stand by that. If he beats David Morrell It's hard to imagine he's going to fight the winner of that fight, whether it's Artur or Dimitri. I would sooner expect David to move all the way up there to cruiserweight and see about winning a title from Zurdo Ramirez.
Now, if David Morrell wins, it's a little different. I could see David Morrell challenging the winner of that fight, and I could see David Morrell losing that fight.
Dimitri Bivol and Artur Beterbiev compete at a much higher level than those two do, and you can make of that what you will, but both Dimitri and Artur have reigned over this division for, over 5 or 6 years.
They both became champions in, circa 2017?
Promotional politics and a lack of finances for two Russian nationals. That's what prevented them from fighting, but now that they have fought and are set to fight again in a jiffy,
we're gonna get answers.
So many people get upset when I express my skepticism as to whether or not David Benavidez will meet that challenge, but it's not like he has a history of meeting challenges.
What do you want me to say? He sat at super middleweight through 2.5 cycles of champions and never unified anything. He doesn't start caring about collecting all the belts until Canelo has them. And it's obvious why, because you want to get paid.
For a prize fighter, that's not a crime. But don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining. Don't try to tell me he's some kind of legacy fighter. He's all about legacy, all of a sudden.
Please.
You wouldn't still be talking about Canelo, and he is. Taking shots at Canelo, shading Canelo, and complaining about Canelo if what you really wanted was a crack at Undisputed, you've already got it. All you have to do is beat David Morrell, and that guy only has 11 professional fights. Who's the best guy he fought?
You better not lose.
For all the crap and complaining that I find in the comment section of my videos detailing this subject, you better not go out there and lose to a guy with only 11 professional fights. What kind of monster are you?
Cookie Monster. Have you seen this guy lately?
He's huge. I saw them doing the rounds to promote this upcoming pay-per-view in February, and David Benavidez looks to be walking around at 200 plus. He's got a lot of weight to lose before February gets here. I don't imagine that's easy.
And these guys, his cult of supporters, it's like they don't want me to notice it or don't want me to talk about it. What do you want me to say?
All I know is you've got expectations, my friend. You're supposed to be some kind of monster. So you're expected to beat a guy with only 11 professional bouts. And not only that, you're expected to face the winner of Beterbiev versus Bivol. And if you don't, for any reason you decide to do something else, we'll know you're full of shit.
You're full of it.